My name is Christiana, and I am 32 years old. I used to be a mid-level finance director at one of the biggest tech companies in Chicago. It was my dream job until Robert Thompson, my boss, decided his unqualified son deserved a fast track to success. For months I watched as everything I worked for was handed to someone who could barely create a spreadsheet. But I found salvation in the most unexpected place, a corporate liability document with my boss's signature. Before I tell you how I used that signature to outsmart him, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to deal with workplace favoritism. 8 years ago, I joined Apex Technologies as a junior accountant fresh out of graduate school. Apex was a thriving software company specializing in security solutions for financial institutions. Our headquarters occupied 3 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in downtown Chicago with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The view from our office always reminded me how far I had come from my modest beginnings in a small suburb outside Boston. When I started at Apex, the company had just crossed the $100 million annual revenue mark and was expanding rapidly. The finance department was small but efficient with clear paths for advancement based on performance. Through consistent overtime, innovative cost-saving strategies, and an almost obsessive attention to detail, I climbed from junior accountant to senior accountant within 2 years. By year 4, I was promoted to finance manager. Last year, I achieved my position as finance director, overseeing a team of 8 professionals. My closest colleagues at Apex became like a second family. Marcus Jenkins headed the development team and often collaborated with finance on budgeting for new projects. With his salt and pepper beard and collection of vintage band t-shirts hidden under button-ups, he brought a calming presence to heated budget meetings. Jessica Ramirez ran human resources with compassionate efficiency. We bonded over late nights preparing end-of-year reviews and shared a love for true crime podcasts. Then, there was Rachel Chen, my direct report and closest friend in the finance department. She had joined 3 years ago and showed the same drive and talent that had propelled my own career. Initially, Apex prided itself on a culture of meritocracy and transparency. The CEO, William Parker, often repeated the mantra excellence and teamwork in company meetings. Every employee understood that hard work would be recognized and rewarded. The annual bonuses reflected actual contributions and promotions were based on measurable achievements. It was refreshing and motivated everyone to give their best. Robert Thompson joined Apex as Chief Financial Officer 5 years ago. In his early 50s, with perfect posture and tailored suits, he projected confidence and competence. With 20 years of experience at larger corporations, he brought valuable insights to our growing company. I admired him and worked hard to earn his approval. For the first 3 years, our professional relationship flourished. He recognized my abilities, gave me increasingly complex projects, and became a mentor of sorts. I trusted his judgment and believed he had my best interests at heart. Everything changed 6 months ago when Robert's son, Michael Thompson, appeared in our office. Michael was 26 years old, recently graduated with an MBA from a mid-tier business school. Unlike his father, who radiated natural authority, Michael seemed perpetually uncertain behind designer glasses and forced smiles. His resume showed internships at companies where his father had connections but no significant full-time experience. His knowledge of practical financial processes appeared superficial at best, limited to theoretical concepts without real-world application. My personal life had always taken a back seat to my career ambitions. I lived alone in a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, a 15-minute drive from the office. Bailey, my tabby cat, was my main companion at home. The apartment represented years of financial discipline and career advancement, with a small balcony where I grew herbs in the summer and a second bedroom converted into a home office. I had been saving to upgrade to a condo with a view similar to our office, planning to make the purchase after my next promotion. That promotion to senior finance director was supposed to happen within the next year. Robert had mentioned it during my last performance review, noting that I was on track to take on more strategic responsibilities. I had already started preparing, taking additional leadership courses online, and studying our competitors' financial structures. The position would mean a 30% salary increase and a seat at the executive table. It was the next logical step in my career path, one I had been working toward since my first day at Apex. The first signs of trouble were subtle. Robert started having private conversations with various department heads, which wasn't unusual, but the hushed tones and abrupt endings when others approached seemed suspicious. Then came the family meetings with the CEO, where Robert would mention his son's accomplishments unprompted. I noticed emails with Michael copied that had nothing to do with external business. Still, I dismissed my concerns as paranoia. Surely a company built on meritocracy wouldn't abandon its principles so easily. The announcement of Michael's hiring came during a routine department meeting. Robert mentioned casually that his son would be joining the finance team the following week. What struck me immediately was the absence of the standard hiring process. There had been no job posting, no interviews with team members, and no skills assessment. When Rachel quietly asked about the position he would fill, Robert revealed that Michael would be taking the financial project manager role, the exact position I had been advocating Rachel be promoted into. The entire room fell silent, the only sound the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the faint clicking of Jessica's pen as she made notes, her face carefully neutral, but her knuckles white with tension. The morning Michael arrived, Robert gathered the finance department in our glass-walled conference room to introduce him. "Everyone, this is Michael Thompson. He will be our new financial project manager, bringing fresh perspectives to our team. I expect you all to help him acclimate and share your knowledge." The words sounded reasonable, but the underlying message was clear: this was not up for discussion. I scanned the room, noting the forced smiles and uncomfortable shifting. Rachel sat with perfect posture, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She had been working toward that position for 2 years, taking on additional projects and earning a specialized certification on her own time. Now, with no explanation, her path was blocked by someone with no relevant experience. Christiana, Robert continued, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "As our finance director, you will be mentoring Michael directly. Your experience will be invaluable in helping him understand our operations." Of course, I replied professionally while mentally calculating the additional hours this would add to my already packed schedule, happy to help the team. Our first meeting revealed the extent of the challenge ahead. Michael arrived 20 minutes late, coffee in hand, no notebook or laptop. I had prepared an overview of our current projects and key financial processes, complete with visuals and examples. "So these quarterly reports," Michael said, gesturing vaguely at my carefully prepared slides, "they just need like profit and loss stuff, right? I can have my assistant handle those." "We don't have assistants in the finance department," I explained carefully. "And quarterly reports include comprehensive cash flow analysis, departmental budget tracking, projection modeling, and compliance documentation. They require director-level review and approval before submission to the executive team." Michael stared at me blankly before checking his phone. "Sounds complicated. Maybe you could just show me the finished versions, and I can put my name on them for now." He laughed as if he had made a joke, but there was no humor in his eyes. That pattern continued for weeks. I would attempt to train Michael on essential processes, and he would either dismiss their importance or expect me to complete the work for him. Robert began sending Michael's assignments directly to me with notes like, "Please guide Michael through this," or "Ensure this gets done correctly," which translated to, "Do this for my son." The first major issue arose when Michael was responsible for the quarterly financial report for our largest client. After explaining the process multiple times and providing templates, I received his completed work the night before the deadline. The document was riddled with errors, misclassified expenses, inaccurate revenue projections, and missing regulatory disclosures. I stayed until 2 a.m. correcting the mistakes, my frustration growing with each error. The next day, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep, I watched as Robert congratulated Michael in front of the team for completing his first quarterly report. No mention of my corrections, or the fact that the submitted document bore almost no resemblance to Michael's original work. During lunch that day, I met with Marcus and Jessica in a small cafe across from our building, seeking perspective and support. "This can't be legal," Marcus said, stirring his soup absently. "There have to be company policies against this kind of nepotism." Jessica sighed, the HR professional in her battling with the friend. "Unfortunately, while it's unethical, it's not technically against company policy. Robert got approval from William before hiring Michael, so all the proper channels were technically followed, even if the spirit of our hiring practices was completely ignored." "What about my team?" I asked. Rachel was devastated, and the others are watching their advancement opportunities disappear before their eyes. Document everything, Jessica advised quietly. Every assignment, every correction, every instance where you do Michael's work. It might not help immediately, but if things escalate, you will need evidence. Despite my frustration, I tried to be a good mentor. I created simplified guides for Michael, scheduled regular check-ins, and provided detailed feedback on his work. He responded by showing up late, ignoring instructions, and complaining to his father when I pointed out necessary corrections. Robert's attitude toward me shifted subtly but unmistakably. Where he had once praised my attention to detail, he now called it nitpicking. My thorough analysis became overthinking. In meetings, he began interrupting my presentations or questioning my conclusions in front of others, something he had never done before. The breaking point came during my 6-month performance review. Sitting across from Robert in his corner office, I expected the usual positive feedback with constructive suggestions for growth. Instead, he slid a document across the desk, with needs improvement checked in multiple categories. "I am concerned about your teamwork and adaptability, Christiana," he said, his tone falsely sympathetic. "Several colleagues have mentioned you seem resistant to new ideas and unwilling to support developing team members." "By several colleagues, you mean Michael?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice level. "This isn't about specific individuals," he replied smoothly. "This is about your overall approach. As a director, you need to be more focused on elevating the entire team rather than highlighting your individual contributions." I left that meeting with the first negative review of my career and a growing certainty that my position was in jeopardy. That evening, I created a secure folder on my personal cloud storage and began systematically backing up emails, reports, and documentation of all interactions related to Michael. I also started keeping a detailed journal recording conversations and incidents with timestamps and witnesses. Something told me I would need this record sooner rather than later. 3 months after Michael joined Apex, Robert announced a major project with First National Bank, a potential client worth $7 million annually. This was the culmination of relationship building I had been nurturing for over 2 years, with countless lunch meetings, detailed proposals, and late-night preparation sessions. I had personally developed the customized financial tracking system that had impressed their executive team. "Michael will be taking the lead on the First National account," Robert announced during our department meeting. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "Christiana, you will support him as needed to ensure a smooth onboarding process." "Robert, I have been working with First National since initial contact," I said, fighting to keep my voice professional. "I developed the solution they are implementing and have built relationships with their key decision makers." "Exactly," he replied with a dismissive wave. "You have done the groundwork, and now Michael can take it forward. This is a perfect development opportunity, and your support will be invaluable. Be a team player, Christiana." There it was again, that phrase, team player. The implication that by advocating for myself for the work I had done, I was somehow being selfish. The tension in our department grew palpable. Other team members watched as their projects were reassigned to Michael, or they were instructed to assist him with basic tasks he should have been able to handle independently. Rachel began taking lunch alone, scrolling through job listings on her phone. 2 junior analysts requested transfers to different departments. The finance team that had once operated like a well-oiled machine was now fragmented and demoralized. During a presentation to the executive team, Michael confidently presented my analysis of cost-saving opportunities as his own. I had spent weekends developing the model, and he had merely changed the name on the slides. When I made eye contact with him during the presentation, he smirked slightly before continuing. Robert nodded proudly throughout the presentation, occasionally adding, "This is exactly the fresh thinking we needed." The company summer party should have been a celebration of our record-breaking second quarter. Instead, it became a showcase for Robert's favoritism. Standing on a small stage in the rented venue's garden, champagne in hand, he gave a speech about new talent driving future growth. "I particularly want to recognize Michael Thompson," Robert said, gesturing for his son to join him on stage. "In just a few months, he has revolutionized our approach to client financial management. Michael represents the future of our finance department." I stood in the back, sipping water and calculating how soon I could leave without appearing rude. Jessica found me there, her expression sympathetic. You know none of us believe that nonsense, right? She whispered. Everyone sees what is happening. Then why isn't anyone saying anything? I asked, the frustration of months finally breaking through. Fear, she replied simply. Robert has the CEO's ear, and people are worried about their jobs. Speaking of which, she hesitated before continuing. There are rumors about restructuring in finance. I thought you should know. The next day, I discovered a critical error in Michael's report to First National Bank. He had misstated projected implementation costs by nearly $300,000, an error that would have resulted in a significant loss for Apex if the client had signed based on those figures. I corrected the mistake after hours and submitted the revised version, copying Robert. His only response was a terse email. In the future, discuss any concerns with Michael directly before making changes. When quarterly bonuses were announced, the finance departments were reduced by 15% due to performance issues requiring additional oversight from executive management. This despite the fact that we had met or exceeded all our targets. The only performance issues had been Michael's, but we were all being punished for them. This is getting ridiculous, Rachel said during a rare moment alone in the break room. I am doing my job and half of Michael's, but my bonus is cut because he cannot perform. Have you considered looking elsewhere? I asked, concerned about her growing frustration. Every day, she admitted. But I have been here 3 years, and my work history before that is spotty. I needed at least 5 years at one company to strengthen my resume. She sighed. But I am not sure I can last 2 more years of this. Walking back from lunch one day, I passed by the partially open door of the executive conference room. Robert's voice drifted out, unusually animated. William, I think Michael is ready for more responsibility. The senior finance director position we discussed creating next year. I believe he would be an excellent candidate. My blood ran cold. That was the position Robert had promised was in my future, the next step in my career progression. I hurried past before they could notice me, my mind racing. Not only was Robert giving Michael unearned opportunities in the present, he was actively working to block my future advancement in favor of his son. That night I met Rachel for drinks at a small bar far from the office. The dim lighting matched our mood as we nursed our cocktails. I think I need to start job hunting, I admitted. Robert is positioning Michael for what should be my promotion. Rachel looked at me with genuine alarm. If you leave, what happens to the rest of us? You are the only thing standing between Michael and complete disaster. I cannot stay in a company where years of hard work mean nothing compared to having the right last name, I said, voicing the bitter truth we both recognized. As the weeks passed, my sleep suffered. I developed tension headaches that no amount of pain relievers could touch. My cat Bailey seemed to sense my distress, staying closer than usual as I lay awake at night wondering how my promising career had derailed so completely. I began to question my own worth, wondering if perhaps I had overestimated my contributions or abilities. The self-doubt was almost worse than the anger. The breaking point came on a Wednesday in October. Michael had been tasked with preparing the quarterly financial presentation for the parent company's CFO, who was visiting from the New York office. This was a critical report that would influence resource allocation and strategic planning for the coming year. I had offered to review the presentation before submission, but both Michael and Robert had assured me it was under control. Michael needs to take full ownership of his projects, Robert had said dismissively. Your input is not necessary at this stage. The meeting with the parent company executives was scheduled for 10 in the morning. At 9:45, the CEO's assistant rushed into my office, panic evident on her face. Christiana, William needs you in the main conference room immediately. There is a problem with the financial presentation. I hurried to the conference room to find a tense standoff. The parent company's CFO, James Wilson, was reviewing printed copies of Michael's presentation with a deep frown. Our CEO, William, looked ashen. Robert stood behind Michael, whose usual smug expression had been replaced by barely concealed panic. Christiana, good, William said when I entered. Can you please explain why our quarterly numbers show a 20% revenue increase when the actual figure is closer to 7%? I quickly reviewed the document, horror growing with each page. Michael had completely misstated our financial position, inflating revenue figures and underreporting expenses. Worse, he had projected impossible growth for the coming quarters based on these false baselines. Any decisions made using this data would be catastrophically misguided. I am not familiar with this version of the report, I said carefully. These figures do not match our actual performance. Michael assured us you had reviewed and approved these numbers, James said, his tone dangerously controlled. Before I could respond, Michael interjected. I gave Christiana plenty of time to provide input, but she was always too busy. I had to make some adjustments based on more recent data she didn't have access to. That is completely false, I replied, struggling to maintain professionalism. I offered to review this presentation multiple times and was told my input was not needed. Furthermore, there is no more recent data that would justify these figures. They are simply incorrect. The next hour was excruciating as I worked to reconstruct accurate figures while the executives waited. Michael alternated between deflecting blame and attempting to justify his errors. Robert remained unusually silent, his face unreadable. When the corrected presentation was finally ready, Michael attempted to present it, but James cut him off. I would prefer to hear from someone who actually understands these numbers, he said coldly. Christiana, please proceed. After the meeting, as the visiting executives departed for another appointment, Robert cornered me in the hallway. His face was flushed with anger. What the hell was that? He demanded. You completely undermined Michael in there. I presented accurate information, I replied evenly. The alternative was allowing our parent company to make decisions based on fabricated data. You could have found a way to support the team instead of grandstanding, he snapped. Be a team player. The last words came out as a shout that echoed through the hallway, drawing stares from passing colleagues. Robert, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, the team is not served by presenting false information. That puts everyone's jobs at risk. This conversation is not over, he replied, turning abruptly and following the executives. I returned to my office, shaking with a combination of adrenaline and stress. An email from William appeared in my inbox requesting my presence at a meeting with James and Robert later that afternoon to discuss finance department processes. Michael was notably absent from the recipient list. The message was clear: I would be expected to fix Michael's mistakes while allowing him to save face. I was to be the scapegoat, punished for refusing to support Robert's nepotistic agenda. As I prepared for the afternoon meeting, another email arrived from Robert instructing me to stay late that weekend to review all of Michael's previous submissions for similar errors. Meanwhile, a company-wide email announced Michael would be joining the executive team for their golf outing on Saturday, an invitation typically reserved for director-level employees and above. That evening, long after most employees had departed, I remained at my desk compiling documentation for the meeting. The office was silent except for the occasional sound of the cleaning staff in distant hallways. I decided to check Robert's calendar to see if he had scheduled any follow-up meetings about the situation. When I logged into the shared calendar system, a notification indicated Robert had accidentally left his email open on a shared computer in the conference room. Normally, I would simply log him out, but something compelled me to check if there were any messages related to the day's disaster. What I found shattered any remaining illusions. A series of emails between Robert and Michael detailed their strategy. One from Robert, sent just last week, read, "Once we transition Christiana out, you will have clear path to senior director. Her expertise threatens your advancement, so we need to document performance issues. The quarterly presentation is your opportunity to demonstrate leadership. I will ensure she has no input." Michael's response turned my blood cold. Won't she cause problems if we push her out? She knows too much about our processes. Leave that to me, Robert had replied. I have already discussed restructuring with William. By the time she realizes what's happening, it will be too late. They were actively plotting to force me out of the company I had helped build. The position I had earned through years of dedicated work was being handed to Michael simply because he was Robert's son. In that moment of clarity, I realized I needed to protect myself. I began searching through our document management system for anything that might help. As finance director, I had access to most company policies and agreements. After an hour of searching, I found the corporate liability policy updated 6 months ago when our parent company implemented new compliance standards. The document detailed the approval processes for financial reports with specific language about conflicts of interest. One passage stood out. To ensure accuracy and prevent conflicts of interest, all financial reports must receive 2 separate management approvals. from different reporting lines. Under no circumstances may a manager approve reports prepared by immediate family members. At the bottom of the document was Robert's digital signature dated March 15th. He had not only acknowledged the policy but had been on the implementation committee. According to this policy, Robert could not approve Michael's work, and as finance director, I was the designated second approver for all departmental reports. By bypassing me in the approval process, they had violated corporate policy and potentially created legal liability for the company. I printed the document, my hands steady for the first time in hours. That night, I called my parents in Boston, something I rarely did on weeknights. "Sweetheart, you sound terrible," my mother said immediately. "What is wrong?" I found myself explaining the whole situation, months of frustration pouring out. My father, a retired accounting professor, listened silently until I finished. "Christiana," he said, "finally you did not work this hard to be pushed aside by someone who has not earned his position. Your mother and I did not sacrifice for your education so you could be treated this way." "But what can I do?" I asked, tears finally breaking through. "They are actively working to push me out." "You stand your ground," he replied firmly. "You follow the rules even if they do not. Your integrity is not negotiable." After hanging up, I made my decision. I would no longer sign off on Michael's substandard work. I would not approve reports that did not meet our standards. I would follow the corporate policy to the letter, regardless of the pressure Robert might apply. If they wanted to fire me for doing my job correctly, they would have to do so openly. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. Bailey curled against my side, the printed policy secured in my bag. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, renewed determination guiding my actions. I sent a brief professional email to my team, outlining our department's report approval process, as per corporate policy, with the relevant document attached. I did not single out Michael or mention the previous day's events, but the message was clear: we would be following proper procedures going forward. When Michael arrived an hour late, I returned his most recent report with detailed notes on necessary corrections. His face darkened as he skimmed my comments. "This is unnecessary," he said, dropping the document on my desk. "Just sign off on it like you usually do." "I cannot approve this report in its current state," I replied calmly. "It contains several inaccuracies that need to be addressed before submission." Whatever, he muttered, retrieving the report and stomping out. Less than 30 minutes later, Robert appeared in my doorway. "Can I see you in my office?" It was phrased as a question but delivered as a command. Robert's corner office featured floor-to-ceiling windows with an impressive view of the Chicago skyline. He gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs, facing his desk, remaining standing himself in a clear power play. "Michael tells me you are refusing to sign off on his report," he began without preamble. "I provided feedback on necessary corrections," I clarified. "Once those are addressed, I will be happy to approve it." Christiana, Robert sighed as if speaking to a difficult child. "We do not have time for these games. The report needs to be submitted today. Just sign off on it." "I cannot do that, Robert. The report contains incorrect profit projections and misclassified expenses. Approving it would violate my professional responsibilities and company policy." His expression hardened. "Are you refusing a direct request from your supervisor?" I maintained eye contact, my voice steady. "I am upholding the standards of my position and adhering to corporate policy, which requires accurate reporting and proper approval processes. This attitude is exactly why your last performance review was concerning," he said, switching tactics. "Your inability to adapt and support team members will affect your future here." "Is that a threat?" I asked quietly. "It is a reality check," he replied. "Your position requires flexibility and teamwork. If you cannot demonstrate those qualities, we will need to reconsider your role." I left his office without agreeing to his demands, my heart pounding but my resolve stronger than ever. This was no longer just about Michael's incompetence or Robert's favoritism. It was about the integrity of our financial reporting and my professional ethics. Over the next week, I returned 3 more of Michael's reports with detailed correction requirements. Each time he complained to Robert, and each time Robert pressured me to approve them regardless of quality. I held firm, citing specific policies and regulations. My team noticed the shift. Rachel cautiously approached me after a department meeting. Something is different, she observed. You seem more, determined. I am just ensuring we maintain our standards, I replied, not wanting to involve her in the conflict. Nothing more. Well, whatever it is, I'm glad to see it, she said with a small smile. It feels like someone is finally standing up to the Thompson dynasty. The situation escalated when Michael submitted the monthly financial summary directly to the executive team, bypassing me entirely. The report contained significant errors, including revenue recognition, timing issues that could have regulatory implications if not corrected. I had a choice: stay quiet and let the executives receive inaccurate information, or speak up and risk Robert's wrath. The decision was easier than I expected. I composed a detailed email to William James at the parent company and our compliance officer. I calmly outlined the errors in the submitted report, attached a corrected version, and included a copy of the corporate liability policy, highlighting the sections on proper approval processes and conflicts of interest. As finance director, I am obligated to ensure all financial reporting meets company standards and regulatory requirements, I wrote. I am bringing this to your attention as the submitted report contains several inaccuracies that could affect decision-making and compliance. I sent the email before I could second-guess myself. Within minutes, my phone rang. It was James from the parent company. Christiana, I just received your email. This is very concerning. Can you come to the main conference room immediately? I am calling an emergency meeting. The next hour was a blur. An internal audit team was assembled to review all financial reports submitted in the past 6 months. I provided my documentation of corrections I had made to Michael's work. The compliance officer reviewed the approval policy and confirmed that Robert should not have been approving reports prepared by his son. James called Robert and Michael to the conference room. When they arrived, Michael's usual swagger was replaced by nervous fidgeting. Robert maintained his composure, but I could see tension in the set of his shoulders. We have a serious situation, James began without preamble. It appears multiple financial reports have been submitted with inaccurate information and improper approval. There must be some misunderstanding, Robert interjected smoothly. All reports go through a thorough review process. That is the problem, James replied. According to your own corporate policy, you cannot approve reports prepared by your son, yet you have been doing exactly that for months. Michael's face flushed. Christiana is supposed to review my work, but she nitpicks everything. She is impossible to please. Is expecting accuracy nitpicking? James asked coldly. The preliminary audit shows numerous errors in reports bearing your name, Michael. Errors that would have been caught in a proper review process. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Michael became increasingly defensive, eventually claiming I was deliberately sabotaging him out of jealousy. Robert attempted to downplay the issues, suggesting they were simple oversights that could be easily corrected. James was having none of it. This is not about mistakes which happen. This is about deliberately circumventing controls put in place to ensure accuracy and integrity. This is about nepotism undermining the financial reporting structure of this company. William, who had remained mostly silent, finally spoke. Robert, I trusted you. We have been friends for years, and I supported hiring Michael because you vouched for his abilities. This is deeply disappointing. As the evidence mounted, James made a decision that stunned the room. Michael, please gather your personal belongings. Security will escort you out. Your employment is terminated effective immediately for violation of company policies. Michael stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. His face contorted with rage as he pointed at me. This is your fault. You undermined me from day one. He turned to his father. Are you going to let them do this? Robert remained seated, his expression unreadable. James continued. Robert, you are suspended pending a full investigation. Please surrender your company laptop and building access card. As security arrived to escort Michael out, he turned to me one last time. You think you've won? You're nothing but a jealous bitch who ruined my career. The security guard firmly guided him toward the door as he continued to shout. I maintained my composure through the entire confrontation, but inside a strange mix of vindication and sadness washed over me. This was not how I had wanted things to end, but it was the inevitable result of months of ethical violations and preferential treatment. After the meeting, I returned to my office in a daze. The events of the day felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold. I gathered my things, planning to leave early. My mind and body were exhausted from the constant tension of the past months. As I was shutting down my computer, Robert appeared in my doorway. Security had apparently allowed him to gather some personal items before escorting him out. His face was a mask of barely controlled fury. "My office. Now." The words came through clenched teeth. Against my better judgment, I followed him. Once inside, he closed the door with controlled precision. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I did my job, Robert. I upheld the standards of this company and my profession." "You destroyed my son's career," he exploded, slamming his hand on the desk. "Years of planning all ruined because you couldn't be a team player." Michael ruined his own career by submitting inaccurate reports and bypassing proper review processes. I replied, surprised by my own calmness. "And you enabled him by putting him in a position he wasn't qualified for." "You need to fix this," he demanded, leaning toward me across the desk. "Tell James it was all a misunderstanding. Say you overreacted. Fix this." I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed copy of the corporate liability policy. I placed it on his desk, turned to the last page where his signature was clearly visible. "You signed this, Robert. You agreed that no manager should approve reports prepared by family members. You created a clear conflict of interest, and when I tried to maintain proper controls, you threatened my job." Robert stared at the document at his own signature. For 10 long seconds he stood, frozen recognition dawning in his eyes. Then I noticed his hand begin to tremble. "I was trying to help my son," he said finally, his voice suddenly smaller. "Is that so wrong? I just wanted to give him a good start. At the expense of qualified employees who earned their positions. At the expense of accurate financial reporting. At the expense of my career." I shook my head. "That was never your decision to make." "I could have handled it better," he admitted, sinking into his chair. "I pushed too hard too fast. But he's my son, Christiana. Can't you understand that? If you could just help smooth this over." "No," I said firmly. "I will not compromise my professional integrity or the company's financial accuracy. Michael needs to earn his position like everyone else. And you need to face the consequences of your actions." "My entire career," he whispered, more to himself than to me. 30 years of building my reputation gone in an instant. "That was your choice, Robert, not mine." Security appeared at the door, informing Robert his time was up. As he gathered the last of his personal items, he looked at me one final time. "I underestimated you," he said quietly. "I won't make that mistake again." The next morning, William called an all-hands meeting. The atmosphere was tense as employees speculated about the sudden departure of both Thompsons. William confirmed that Robert was taking an indefinite leave of absence and that Michael no longer worked for the company. "In light of recent events, we will be implementing more robust oversight of our hiring and reporting processes," William announced. "Christiana will serve as acting finance director until a permanent replacement for Robert can be identified." The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders, but for the first time in months it felt manageable. After the meeting, colleagues stopped by my office to offer support. Marcus gave me a silent thumbs up as he passed in the hallway. Jessica brought coffee and a simple note that read, "Integrity wins." That evening, Marcus and Jessica insisted on taking me to dinner to celebrate. To Christiana, Marcus toasted, raising his glass. "Who taught us all that standing up for what's right isn't just a company value on a poster?" "I still can't believe you stood your ground against Robert," Jessica said, shaking her head in admiration. "Most people would have caved under that kind of pressure." "I almost did many times," I admitted. But eventually I realized I wasn't just defending my position, I was defending the integrity of our entire financial system. Rachel joined us for dessert, her earlier resignation letter now withdrawn. "Why would I leave now?" she laughed. "Things are finally getting interesting around here." Over the next week, I participated in multiple interviews with human resources and legal about the situation. Rather than being treated as a troublemaker, I was commended for my commitment to proper procedures. "Your documentation was impeccable," the legal counsel told me. "You gave us exactly what we needed to address this situation cleanly." William asked to meet with me privately on Friday afternoon. I entered his office, uncertain what to expect. Christiana, I owe you an apology. He began surprising me. I allowed personal friendship to cloud my professional judgment. I knew Robert was pushing for Michael's advancement, but I didn't realize the extent of the situation. You trusted your CFO, I said. That's understandable. Perhaps. But it was still a failure of leadership, he replied. What you may not realize is that your actions prevented what could have been a major scandal. James informed me that the parent company was already questioning some of our financial reporting. If those inaccurate reports had continued, we might have faced regulatory investigation. He slid a folder across the desk. The board has approved an immediate bonus to recognize your contributions and ethical standards. They've also asked me to gauge your interest in a more permanent leadership role within the finance department. As I left his office, I checked my email one last time before the weekend. There was a message from James, the parent company's CFO. Christiana, I was impressed by your handling of a difficult situation. We have an opening for a senior finance director at headquarters. Would you be interested in discussing this opportunity next week? For the first time in months, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. Standing up for what was right hadn't cost me my career. It had elevated it. 6 months have passed since that decisive confrontation. I am writing this from my new office on the 40th floor of our headquarters building in New York. The view of the Manhattan skyline still takes my breath away, sometimes a daily reminder of how far I've come. As Senior Finance Director, I oversee financial operations across 3 regional offices. My team includes 20 professionals who have quickly learned that I value accuracy and integrity above all else. The transition wasn't easy, moving to a new city and taking on significantly more responsibility, but it has been incredibly rewarding. The changes at Apex were substantial following the Thompson incident. William implemented a new hiring policy, with multiple levels of approval required for any position above manager level. The board created an ethics committee with representatives from each department to review concerns about favoritism or improper practices. Annual reviews now include peer feedback components to ensure more balanced assessments. 3 months after leaving, Robert announced his early retirement. In a surprising gesture, he sent me a brief email. Christiana, I regret how things ended. My actions were driven by misplaced priorities. You were right to stand your ground. I wish you continued success in your career. Robert. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it acknowledged the truth of what had happened, which was more than I expected. Michael eventually found employment at a smaller firm, starting at an appropriate entry-level position. According to mutual connections, he is actually doing well now that he's earning his advancement rather than having it handed to him. Sometimes the lessons we need most are the ones that hurt at the time. My personal healing journey wasn't immediate. For weeks after the confrontation, I would wake up at 3 a.m, replaying the events and wondering if I could have handled things differently. The stress had taken a physical toll, and it took time to recover from months of constant anxiety. I started practicing yoga and meditation techniques I had previously dismissed as too time-consuming for my busy schedule. Gradually, the nightmares subsided. My confidence, which had been so badly shaken by Robert's manipulation, began to rebuild stronger than before. I learned to trust my instincts again and to recognize the difference between constructive criticism and deliberate undermining. My relationships with colleagues from Apex have evolved in interesting ways. Marcus and I still text regularly, sharing industry news and the occasional bad accounting joke. Jessica was promoted to HR director after implementing new anti-nepotism policies that became a model for other branches. Rachel decided to stay at Apex, where she finally received the promotion she deserved. We meet for virtual coffee every other week, and I'm mentoring her toward a director-level position. Perhaps the most meaningful change has been in how I view my career. Before, I measured success primarily through promotions and salary increases. Now I understand that professional integrity is the foundation everything else is built upon. All the titles and bonuses in the world cannot compensate for compromising your values. 3 months ago, I was invited to speak at a business ethics symposium about maintaining professional standards under pressure. Standing at that podium, sharing my experience with hundreds of professionals facing similar challenges, I realized how many people struggle with workplace favoritism and ethical dilemmas. On a personal level, my life has expanded beyond work in ways I hadn't anticipated. I purchased a comfortable condo in Brooklyn, adopted a second cat to keep Bailey company, and started teaching a night class on financial ethics at a local university. The students' perspectives and questions constantly remind me why standards and principles matter in our profession. Looking back at that confrontation in Robert's office, I'm still amazed at how a single document with a signature became the turning point. It wasn't just about catching someone in a technical violation. It was about holding people accountable to the standards they claim to uphold. If you're facing a similar situation of workplace nepotism or favoritism, here's what I learned. First, document everything, especially verbal instructions that contradict written policies. Second, know your company's policies better than those trying to bend them. Third, build relationships with colleagues who share your commitment to doing things right. Finally, remember that standing up for integrity might feel lonely in the moment, but it's the foundation of a sustainable career and personal pride. The most important lesson I learned is that there's a profound difference between being a team player and being complicit in wrongdoing. True teamwork means holding each other to high standards, not covering for incompetence or unethical behavior. Sometimes the most valuable team contribution you can make is having the courage to say no when others won't. Sometimes success isn't about climbing the highest ladder but standing firm on your foundation of integrity. And trust me, that foundation can take you places that artificial ladders never could. Have you ever had to stand up against favoritism or nepotism in your workplace? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below sharing your experience, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. If you know someone dealing with a similar situation, please share this video with them. Thanks for listening to my story, and remember, your integrity is your most valuable professional asset. Never trade it for temporary approval.